Hello MotoGP enthusiasts. Welcome back to ZNGP Today. Marco Bezzecchi exemplifies a defining paradox of early 2026 MotoGP. The riders who push hardest for wins are also those who fall most often. After 3 rounds, Bezzecchi sits atop the championship with 3 feature race victories. And he also tops the crash tally with 6 incidents. That combination of speed and risk captures the season's character. Marginal gains demand riding at the very edge, and the margin between glory and a spill has never been thinner. Francesco Bagnaia pushed back against what he calls sensationalist coverage after a tense period with Ducati, saying he's learned to be more guarded in the mixed zone and that media narratives often distort reality. The 2022 world champion described the pressure of constant scrutiny, admitted mistakes in how he handled interviews, and framed much of the paddock debate about his form as a mismatch between mechanical issues and public perception. The relationship between VR46 and Gresini has become openly strained after Ducati's decision to move Fermin Aldeguer to VR46 for 2027. What began as a pragmatic reshuffle of satellite team alignments has escalated into a diplomatic headache for Borgo Panigale, exposing how rider contracts, financial muscle, and perceived favoritism can destabilize long-standing partnerships. Alex Marquez admits a difficult start to 2026 as he struggles to extract the last sliver of performance from Ducati's GP26. 3 rounds in, the Gresini rider finds himself well adrift of the form that carried him to the front of the championship in 2025, and he describes the season so far as a fight for survival, while he and his team work to close the gap. Don't forget to click subscribe button and the bell icon for MotoGP news update. The correlation is straightforward. The fastest riders ride closest to the limit, and that increases crash exposure. Bezzecchi's pattern, flawless on Sundays, error-prone in sprints, shows how different session formats reward different risk profiles. Sprint races demand immediate aggression. Feature races reward measured pace and tire management. Riders who can thread that needle win often, but even they pay a price in incidents. In a field where tense decide outcomes, risk becomes a strategic variable rather than an occasional mistake. The crash leaderboard reads like the standings. Jorge Martin and Pedro Acosta follow Bezzecchi with 4 crashes each, while a long list of front pack names have multiple falls. That alignment suggests the season's top performers are also its most accident-prone, reinforcing the idea that parity forces riders into higher risk riding to gain or defend positions. When the grid is compressed, marginal aggression compounds across sessions and circuits. The raw numbers are striking: 33 crashes in Buram, 57 in Ganya, and 73 in Austin. The upward trend reflects escalating pace, more aggressive qualifying and sprint formats, and perhaps circuit-specific factors. Austin's spike, despite tougher conditions than last year, highlights how quickly session intensity can escalate when riders chase every possible advantage. Higher incident totals increase pressure on teams to manage risk without sacrificing competitiveness. The pattern is familiar from Marc Marquez's career: dominant speed paired with frequent crashes. Bezzecchi's approach echoes that template: high reward, high risk. The comparison is not a critique but a recognition that certain riding philosophies produce both spectacular wins and spectacular failures. Aggressive riding styles can define champions, but they also demand exceptional recovery and mental resilience. The season's crash profile has tactical consequences. Teams must balance setup choices that enable outright pace with those that improve stability and tire life. Riders may need to modulate sprint aggression to protect championship prospects, while engineers focus on making bikes more forgiving at the limit. The result is a strategic tension: chase immediate session gains or prioritize long-term consistency. In a tightly matched field, championship success often rewards calculated conservatism as much as raw speed. Early 2026 MotoGP is defined by razor-thin margins. The leaders are also the fallers, and every session carries consequence. If the season continues this way, the title fight will favor riders and teams that can combine peak pace with fewer costly incidents. Bezzecchi's dual status, champion and crash leader, is the season's emblem. To win you must risk, but to win a championship you must also survive the risks you take. Bagnaia said the relentless search for controversy has forced him to change how transparent he is. Where he once answered freely, he now holds back to avoid soundbites that can be twisted into headlines. He acknowledged that rushing into post-race interviews has backfired, producing viral moments that didn't reflect the full story. In my opinion, we're unfortunately bordering on madness in the media lately. High-pressure mixed zones reward brevity and drama. Riders who try to be candid risk misinterpretation. Bagnaia described the chaotic media environment, multiple TV channels, repeated questions, and the cumulative effect of answering the same topic dozens of times. He explained how diplomacy can erode into frustration across successive interviews, producing comments that later dominate coverage. That dynamic, he says, explains several controversial moments attributed to him. Repetition and fatigue in the mixed zone can turn nuance into controversy. On the substance of his recent struggles, Bagnaia argued that mechanical problems were the primary cause of his 2025 dip, while Ducati's internal assessment pointed to a loss of confidence. That divergence has fueled tension and public debate, with Bagnaia feeling misrepresented by simplified media narratives. He framed his comments as an attempt to correct that imbalance. Disagreements over root causes, technical versus psychological, are common and often become public when results falter. The writer conceded he made tactical errors in how he handled the media, notably by entering the mixed zone too quickly after races. Those moments, he said, were mistakes that were amplified online. His new approach is to manage communications more carefully to avoid feeding sensational coverage. The times I've been transparent, I've been fodder for the journalists, and I made a mistake. Media training and timing can be as important as on-track performance for protecting a rider's public image. With reports linking Bagnaia to a move to Aprilia in 2027 and Pedro Acosta tipped to replace him at Ducati, the rider faces both sporting and reputational transitions. He remains focused on performance but warned that the media climate complicates straightforward communication about results and intentions. The broader paddock will watch how he balances transparency with self-protection as the season progresses. Contract speculation and team moves intensify media attention, making careful messaging essential. Bagnaia's comments are a reminder that modern MotoGP is fought on two fronts, the racetrack and the airwaves. He has chosen to tighten his public responses to avoid misrepresentation, while still contesting the narrative that his struggles are purely psychological. How he and his team manage both performance and communication will shape not only his season but also how the paddock and public interpret the next chapter of his career. Ducati has long acted as the intermediary between its satellite teams, but that role is growing more burdensome. An anonymous Ducati executive described the dynamic bluntly: managing VR46 and Gresini is like having to constantly mediate between two children who are always fighting. The Aldiger move, driven by contractual options and VR46's greater financial resources, crystallized existing tensions and prompted rumors that Gresini might seek a new manufacturer partner. Aldiger's transfer was less a sudden poaching than the execution of contractual options Ducati had secured when the rider signed during his Moto2 exit. VR46's deeper pockets and the promise of the latest factory specification made the switch commercially logical for Ducati and attractive to Aldiger, even if the rider personally preferred to stay at Gresini. That financial imbalance is a recurring theme. Teams with stronger budgets can outbid or outpackage smaller outfits when factory alignment is at stake. Faced with Aldiger's departure and Alex Marquez's move to KTM, Gresini explored alternatives. Talks with Honda, a potential return to Aprilia, and interest in riders like Nicolo Villega. But options were constrained. Political history with Aprilia and the unattractive state of Yamaha at the moment narrowed realistic pathways. leaving Gresini to accept a pragmatic continuation with Ducati despite the strained relationship. Gresini will promote Danny Holgado from Moto2 and is linked with Enea Bastianini as a potential second rider, while VR46 will field Aldegar alongside factory stars and benefit from the latest spec machinery. The redistribution of talent reshapes development priorities. Factory backseats typically receive faster upgrades, widening the performance gap between preferred and standard client teams. The episode is a stress test of Ducati's satellite model. Borgo Panigale must balance short-term competitive logic, placing promising riders where they can be best developed, with long-term partner management. If Ducati can stabilize relations and ensure transparent upgrade pathways for all clients, the fallout will be contained. If not, the incident risks prompting deeper realignments among satellite teams and suppliers as the 2027 regulations redraw competitive and commercial lines. The Aldegar transfer is more than a single rider move. It exposes the fragile diplomacy at the heart of modern MotoGP. For Gresini, the immediate task is rebuilding a competitive lineup and securing a supplier strategy that preserves sporting credibility. For VR46, the gain strengthens factory alignment and global profile. For Ducati, the challenge is to manage perceptions and development fairness so that client teams feel supported rather than sidelined. How Borgo Panigale navigates this will shape satellite politics and rider markets as the paddock prepares for the regulatory reset in 2027. Marquez is candid about the deficit. Despite running the same factory-spec Mercedes as Ducati's top riders, he says he's still missing maybe 20% of what he needs to feel competitive. That shortfall has left him uncomfortable on the bike and unable to consistently challenge for top results. I'm still quite far. I'm just trying to survive because the feeling is still not really great. Small subjective deficits in feel can translate into large performance gaps on race day, especially on a bike that demands precise inputs. The contrast with last year is stark. Where Alex led the standings after 3 rounds in 2025, he now sits 8th with 28 points. His Sunday consistency from 2025, 3 wins and a dozen podiums, has not yet reappeared, while teammate Fabio Di Giannantonio has been the more reliable point scorer for Ducati so far. Momentum and confidence built over a season can evaporate quickly when a bike's characteristics change relative to a rider's natural style. Marquez believes the GP26 behavior differs materially from the GP24 that suited him better. Even after extensive preseason running and flyaway mileage, he says the bike's characteristics still clash with his natural riding style, despite retaining some 2024 components and aero choices. That mismatch forces him into a conservative approach to avoid mistakes. When a machine's balance shifts, riders must either adapt their technique or wait for engineering changes that restore a compatible feel. With little to gain early on, Marquez has prioritized consolidation over heroics. At Austin, he focused on scoring points rather than risking everything for a podium, reflecting a pragmatic short-term strategy while the team hunts for solutions. He remains upbeat and motivated, viewing the unexpected schedule break as a chance to regroup and analyze. I'm more motivated than ever to make the next step. The cancellation of Qatar will be good for us. In a long championship, short periods of damage limitation can be the right call while development catches up. Marquez also pointed to the broader paddock shift. Aprilia's stability and grip have given them an edge, and Ducati's bikes now show more movement and less predictable limits. He described Aprilia as a low bike with a lot of stability and a lot of grip, and conceded that finding and controlling the GP26 limit is currently difficult for Ducati riders. Relative development, not absolute decline, often explains why a previously dominant factory appears to slip. Alex Marquez's early 2026 story is one of adaptation. He accepts the work ahead and expects incremental progress, step-by-step improvements in setup, feedback and perhaps targeted updates before her race. If the team can recover the missing 20% of feel, Marquez's consistency and racekraft could quickly lift him back into contention, If not, the season may become a longer process of rebuilding confidence and compatibility with the GP26. Thanks for watching ZNGP Today, and this is your MotoGP news update. And see you next time!